The crystal wine glasses clinked against the bone china like tiny bells, echoing in a cathedral, delicate and polished. Just like the family that surrounded me, or at least, the family they pretended to be. Sunday dinner at the mansion had always been a performance. A tradition carved out of polished mahogany tables and heavy chandeliers, where appearances mattered more than words, and words mattered more than truth. I sat there in my simple black dress, the fabric plain, almost too plain against the glitter of pearls around my mother's neck and the shimmer of my sister, Catherine's designer outfit. She wore it like armor, another trophy to flash in my direction. A reminder that I was different, and that in this house, different was always dangerous. My laptop bag lay beside me, heavier than the cutlery, heavier than the crystal, heavier than the suffocating silence that filled the room between conversations. Inside that bag rested 5 years of my life, 5 years of equations, failures, triumphs, sleepless nights, and endless questions. Quantum stability, the algorithm that had consumed me since the day. I walked out of MIT with nothing but a diploma and too many dreams. That bag was my lifeline, but in this house it was invisible. Dad swirled his Bordeaux with the same casual authority he had used to rule boardrooms for decades. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence filled the air, like a storm cloud that everyone else pretended was just fine weather. "Victoria," he said at last, voice smooth, like he was preparing me for something he'd already decided. "We need to discuss your research funding." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth, pasta cooling on the silver tines. My research funding. The words sounded clinical, detached, like he was speaking about a warehouse shipment or a missed quarterly. Target, not my life's work. "What about it?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though my heart was pounding. "The board feels it's time to cut our losses," he said, sliding a crisp document across the mahogany surface, as though he were simply passing the salt. "We're selling the research division." Catherine smirked behind her wine glass, her lips curling with that familiar venomous satisfaction. Finally, that basement lab was embarrassing for the family name. My pulse raced, my chest tightening. I leaned forward, unable to stop the words that burst from me. "But we're close to a breakthrough. The quantum stability tests, they're showing promising results. This isn't the time to walk away." "Promising," Dad cut in sharply, the single word slamming into me like a gavel. "Promising isn't profitable. Maxwell Industries needs certainty, not theories." He tapped the document once with his Mont Blanc pen. "I've already arranged the sale to Global Tech," Mom dabbed her lips delicately with her napkin, her voice calm and poised, a rehearsed line in the family play. "Darling, it's time to do something practical." "Practical?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "Disbelief." Catherine's laughter was soft but cruel. "By making money," she said smoothly, "while you play with your equations in the dark." Dad pushed the papers closer. "Sign the transfer documents. Global Tech is offering $2 million for the entire project." $2 million. I almost laughed, the number so insulting it felt like an inside joke I wasn't in on. "Dad, the potential applications alone are worthless without proof," he interrupted, leaning back, sighing as if I were exhausting him. My phone buzzed from inside my bag. Once, then again. Then again. Catherine's smirk widened. "Your little friend's texting you tonight?" Her tone dripped poison. My hands shook as I pulled the phone free, ready for some distraction, some lifeline. 3 messages flashed on the screen, all marked urgent, all from the U.S. Patent Office. My throat tightened. I opened the first. "Quantum stability algorithm, patent number 457892 approved." The second, breakthrough designation granted. And the third, my breath caught. Initial. Bidding offer starting at $3.7 billion. Please advise. Billion. Not million. Billion. My fork slid from my hand, clattering against the porcelain plate. The sound made everyone flinch, but I didn't care. I looked up, my pulse hammering. Just as Dad lowered his pen, the ink already drying on the transfer papers. "It's done," he declared, voice full of finality. "Time to join the real world." "Victoria!" I let the silence stretch, let the weight of his words hover in the air like smoke before I spoke. Interesting timing, I said softly, my voice steadier than I felt. I turned the phone so they could see. The patent office seems to disagree about worthless theories. The pen slipped from Dad's hand, clattering against the white tablecloth, leaving an ink stain like spilled blood. Catherine's glass froze midway to her lips. Mom's fork hit her plate with a sharp clang. 3.7, Catherine choked. Billion, I finished. Not million, billion. I rose slowly, smoothing the fabric of my black dress, the laptop bag sliding into my grip like a weapon I had carried for years without them noticing. And that's just the starting bid. Dad lunged forward, reaching for the papers he'd just signed, desperation breaking through his usual composure. But I was faster. I snatched them up, my fingers steady now. These? I held them high. Worthless. The patents are in my name, not Maxwell Industries. His face drained of color. You can't do that. The company funded, my personal trust fund funded it. I cut in coldly. The one Grandma left me? I never took a penny of company money. For the first time in years, I let myself smile thinking of Grandma's last words. Don't let them cage your brilliance, dear. My phone buzzed again. A new message flashed across the screen. I read it aloud, savoring the moment. That's Google raising the bid to 4 billion. The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Decanter, and Dad's breath came harsh, uneven. I stood taller, holding their stares, the quiet daughter who had become invisible in this house. Suddenly visible, undeniable, unstoppable. Shall we discuss? I said, my voice calm, steady, lethal. Who's really joining the real world now? The silence at that table was unlike anything I had ever felt before. Not the heavy, suffocating silence that came when I failed to meet expectations. Not the cold silence of disappointment that had followed me through childhood, but a silence laced with fear. Real fear. Dad's hand hovered uselessly above the papers, his fingers twitching, like he could pull his signature, back from the ink stain, spreading across the white linen. His empire, his certainty, his control, all unraveling in real time. Catherine's face flushed crimson as though the very wine she spilled was crawling up her throat. For once, the sharpness in her eyes faltered, the arrogance cracked. She looked at me like she didn't know me, like the sister she'd spent her life mocking had been replaced by someone she couldn't control, someone she couldn't even comprehend. Mom's pearl necklace trembled against her throat as her breathing quickened. Her napkin clutched in one hand like it could protect her from the truth spilling across the table. You lied to us, Dad finally stammered, his voice stripped of its authority. You manipulated. I survived, I snapped, sharper than I intended. But the truth had lived too long in my chest to come out softly. You wanted to sell me, Dad, my work, my life, for pocket change. I protected myself from the very family that was supposed to protect me. My fingers grazed the edge of my laptop bag, the worn leather warm beneath my touch. A reminder of the nights I had lived inside equations, the nights when the silence of my lab had been my only companion. Catherine found her voice then, brittle but laced with venom. You played us. All this time you pretended to be some obsessed scientist, hiding away in your basement when you were, what? Building a trap for us? I laughed softly, a sound that made her flinch. No, Catherine. I was building a future. You just never bothered to look past your own reflection, to see it. My phone buzzed again, the vibrations loud in the silence. Another bid, another billion. The numbers rising like a tide too strong to fight. I didn't need to read it out loud. The way Dad's eyes darted to the phone, the way Catherine gripped her glass until her knuckles whitened, the way Mom pressed her napkin tighter against her lap, they all knew. The world outside that dining room was shifting, and for the first time it was shifting around me. Dad tried again, his voice low, desperate, the storm cloud shrinking into a man who realized the thunder was no longer his. Victoria, listen to me. Maxwell Industries funded your education, your opportunities, everything. You are. Everything you've done. It's because of this family. I shook my head slowly. No, everything I am is because of the moments you ignored me, dismissed me, laughed at me, Every rejection, every belittling comment, every time you said Catherine was the real Maxwell. That's what built this. Not your money, not your approval, your neglect. I slid the papers he had signed back across the table, the ink still wet enough to smear. These are worthless now. You tried to sell what you never owned. The patents are mine. All 12 of them! Mom gasped, her voice breaking through the heavy air. 12? I turned to her, my expression calm. 12. Quantum stability, quantum encryption, quantum storage. Each one stronger than the last. Each one worth more than this entire company. And you were ready to throw them away for $2 million and Catherine's applause. Dad's face turned a sickly shade of gray, his hand clutching at the edge of the table like it could hold him steady. Catherine's smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of fear she couldn't hide. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice wavered, thin and unconvincing. "You can't have that many patents. You can't have built something that valuable without us." Knowing, I reached into my bag and pulled out my tablet, the glow of the holographic display washing across their shocked faces. Quantum particles danced in perfect synchronization, tiny sparks of light weaving in and out like a cosmic ballet. "Quantum computing without decoherence," I explained softly, my voice the only steady sound in the room. "Perfect stability at room temperature. What you see here is decades ahead of anything your so-called innovation division has touched." Dad's lips parted as he stared at the display, his face reflecting the flickering particles, his power crumbling with every passing second. But the reports, those reports, I cut in, were carefully crafted decoys. Do you really think I'd leave my real research vulnerable in a house where betrayal is as common as dessert? Catherine's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. "You tricked us." "No," I said, leaning closer, my voice low and dangerous. "I learned from you, Catherine. I watched you steal from other divisions, bury promising researchers, destroy careers. I learned how to hide, how to protect, how to deceive when the truth wasn't safe. You taught me that. Congratulations." Mom reached for the decanter again, her hands trembling so violently the crystal clinked against the glass. "Victoria, surely we can discuss this as a family. We didn't understand, like you discussed selling my work?" I asked bitterly, swiping through patent documents on my tablet. Each one lit up the room, each one another nail in the coffin of their control. "You never cared to understand. You cared about appearances, about profit, about Catherine's fake victories." My phone buzzed again. I didn't need to look. The Department of Defense had already reached out earlier in the evening. I knew the world was knocking now, harder than ever. I looked at my father, his eyes wide with the realization that everything he had built, everything he thought was unshakable, was already gone. "You made one mistake tonight," I said quietly, standing tall with the patents glowing behind me. "You thought you could silence me. But the world is finally ready to listen. And you—" I paused, letting the words sink in, letting the silence break them further than my voice ever could. "You're already too late." The glass in Catherine's hand slipped, shattering against the floor, red wine bleeding across the pristine white carpet like a wound. Mom's pearls quivered against her chest, her lips trembling as though words had abandoned her. And Dad, for the first time in my life, looked small, defeated, human. I picked up my bag, the weight no longer a burden but a crown, and walked toward the door. Behind me, the family I had been born into crumbled under the weight of illusions I had just shattered. The future no longer belonged to them. It belonged to me. The next morning, the boardroom of Maxwell. Industries buzzed with the kind of tension you could taste in the air, sharp and metallic like the aftertaste of blood. 14 board members sat rigid in their leather chairs, their eyes darting between me and my father, who still clung to the head of the table like a king, refusing to admit his throne had been taken. The massive screens lining the walls glowed with live stock tickers, red and green numbers dancing in real time. Maxwell Industries' stock had already surged 47% overnight, the market reacting to whispers of a patent breakthrough that no one yet fully understood. The corporate secretary cleared his throat nervously. "This emergency meeting will come to order." His voice cracked slightly. betraying the weight of the moment. Dad leaned forward, his jaw tight, his tone rehearsed, trying to recapture the authority slipping through his fingers. Before we begin, I want to address these ridiculous claims. Let's start with facts, I interrupted, sliding my tablet across the polished surface. My lawyer, Mr. Roberts, stepped forward, distributing thick folders to each board member. The shuffle of papers filled the room, the sound like waves against a dam about to burst. As you'll see, I continued, my voice calm, even, my patents are independently held. They are not and never were assets of Maxwell Industries. Furthermore, under Article 7 of the company charter, my acquisition of controlling shares is legally binding. The words hit like a hammer. Dad's hands clenched on the armrests, his knuckles white. Catherine, sitting near him, slammed her hand against the table. Impossible! She's never even attended a board meeting. She doesn't know how this company works. I smiled, a slow curve of my lips that made her shift uneasily in her seat. Actually, I said, tapping my tablet, I've attended every meeting for the past year. You just didn't recognize me. The screens behind me flickered to life, displaying footage from past board meetings. There I was, in the background, disguised as maintenance staff, as junior assistants, as faces nobody remembered because nobody ever looked twice. Each disguise melted away with a touch, revealing me beneath. Catherine's mouth fell open. You? Facial modification technology, I explained smoothly. Another patent in my portfolio. Amazing what you can learn when people think you're just there to pour coffee. A murmur rippled through the board, disbelief giving way to awe. Dad's voice strained with fury. The board won't stand for this kind of manipulation. The board, I cut him off, my eyes sweeping the room, might be more interested in this. I swiped again, and the screens lit up with years of records, emails, transfers, memos. Catherine's shadow empire of theft laid bare. 5 years of stolen innovations, destroyed researchers, sabotaged divisions, all orchestrated to make her department look like a jewel while burying the real brilliance beneath the dirt. Gasps filled the room. Catherine's face drained of color as her crimes scrolled across the wall for all to see. Ms. Maxwell? Mr. Chin from the audit committee finally spoke, his voice measured but heavy. What exactly are you proposing? I walked slowly toward the window, the city skyline stretching beyond the glass, glowing in the morning sun like a promise. Maxwell Industries was built by my grandfather on innovation, not theft, not intimidation, not fear, real breakthroughs. We've strayed from that. I'm proposing we return. My phone buzzed again. $6 billion. The bidding war raged outside, but I ignored it. I turned back to the board, my voice firm. Effective immediately, I'm restructuring this company. The researchers Catherine buried. I pressed another button. The doors opened and a group of familiar faces entered. Men and women who had been erased, silenced, cast out. Their eyes shone as they stepped forward, hope flickering in the place of bitterness. They're your new department heads. Catherine shot to her feet. This is absurd. These people were terminated. Illegally terminated, I corrected, my tone icy, because they refused to let you steal their work. That ends today. Dad's fury erupted. You can't just— I can, I said, raising my voice for the first time, letting the steel cut through the air, silencing him. And I have one more surprise. Mr. Roberts handed out another set of documents. Confusion spread across the board members' faces as they scanned them. The quantum technology, I explained, is only the beginning. Meet Project Phoenix. The screens exploded with designs, schematics, simulations so advanced that audible gasps filled the room. Catherine, despite herself, leaned forward, her anger eclipsed by curiosity. What is this? Someone whispered. The future, I said simply. And it's already built. I swiped again, revealing footage of a massive underground facility. Rows of glowing servers, research labs humming with power, a complex larger than 3 football fields. While you thought I was wasting time in a basement, I continued, I was building this. The world's most advanced quantum research facility, funded entirely by my trust fund and private investors who actually understand innovation. Impossible. Catherine breathed, shaking her head. The construction, the resources, someone would have noticed. Your spies were too busy chasing scraps, I said with a smirk, while the real work happened right under your feet. I pulled up test results, the numbers flashing like lightning across the screens. 3 weeks ago, we achieved quantum supremacy. Last week, we solved protein folding problems that would take supercomputers centuries. Yesterday, we cracked atmospheric carbon. Capture. Phones buzzed around the table as the markets reacted. Each revelation sent the stock soaring higher. Dr. Rivera, a woman Catherine had fired years ago, stepped forward. Using Ms. Maxwell's quantum stability algorithm, we've developed a room-temperature quantum computer the size of a laptop. The prototype is ready for demonstration. The board erupted with whispers, eyes wide, hands trembling over the reports. Dad tried one last time, his voice hoarse. You planned this, all of it. The patents, the shares, the facility, 5 years of deception. I met his eyes, calm and unyielding. 5 years since you laughed at my proposal and handed the funding to Catherine instead. That day, I learned that to protect innovation, sometimes you have to hide it until the world is ready. My phone buzzed again. 8 billion. I ignored it. I turned back to the board, the weight of the moment pressing against the glass walls of the room. But now, I said softly, we do this in the light. I gestured to Dr. Rivera. You're our new head of innovation. Mr. Chin, you'll lead the audit of Catherine's division. And Dad? He looked up, his face ashen, the storm finally gone. Your retirement package is in your folder, take it. It's more generous than you deserve. Security moved toward Catherine, who shrieked about loyalty, about betrayal, about blood. But her words meant nothing now. The FBI had been waiting for this. I turned to the board, standing tall at the head of the table. My voice was steady, sharp, and filled with a promise older than all of us. Maxwell Industries is mine now. And we're not just surviving. We're building a revolution. The convoy of black SUVs cut through the city like veins of steel, their tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. I sat in the lead vehicle, silence heavy around me, the hum of the engine drowning out the chaos of my thoughts. Beside me, Dr.